What's up, guys? Today we're going to be talking about Severance, Season 2, Episode 9, The After Hours. Dude, what an episode. This one was so good. It was so nice to kind of get back in the swing of the main plot after spending 2 episodes away. And damn, this episode was packed to the brim. There was so much here. It just kept rolling, and there's just one thing after another. We start off in the Egan mansion, which was interesting, to say the least. It was super weird to see what the Egan's lives are like, especially since it seems like they live together. It starts off with Helly swimming laps in their indoor pool at the house, and this was pretty interesting because I felt like it mirrored the scenes where she's being drowned by Irving in episode 4. And after that, we move back upstairs where Helly goes and has breakfast with her dad. And this was interesting. James speaks in his awkward timbre, very soft-spoken, and has a really weird cadence when he speaks. And when Helena asks if he's going to be joining her for breakfast, he just says, "No, I'll watch." That was one of those moments where I was just like, what the hell? It was really strange. And even weirder as Helena's cutting her egg into 6 perfect pieces on a really weird piece of china that depicts some kind of weird Egan lore, I assume. He just kind of stares at her and moans. It was a really awkward moan too. I don't know. He's just so good at that kind of stuff, making you feel uncomfortable. And Helena starts to talk shop with her dad, and one of the first things she says is, "We're seeing to Irving," which was definitely very foreboding for sure. And then her dad comes back with a very interesting line and says, "I wish you'd take them raw," which is even uncomfortable for me to say right now, and definitely something he probably shouldn't be saying to his kid, like, ever. Then we have this exterior shot where the camera's just backing away from their compound, and you see the water tower come up in the bottom of the frame. And I was thinking about this shot, and it was pretty interesting. Like, I guess it's probably just to establish that they live on the Lumen campus. Then we jump over to Mr. Milchick and Miss Huang, where we find out that her name's Eustace Huang. Then we find out that her Wintertide Fellowship's coming to an end. She mentions that, I was supposed to be working through the end of the quarter, which kind of hints at the idea that Mr. Milchick cut it short. You know, she was being insubordinate. She kind of ratted on him. So he's just kind of making a power move here and getting rid of her because he can, basically. But he lets her know that she's moving out of her parents' house. She's going to Svalbard, an archipelago in Norway, where they have this seed vault far up north. And it's basically a repository of every seed imaginable, so if doomsday comes, the plants can be regrown on planet Earth. So it's an interesting location that they decided to use for this Gunnel Egan Empathy Center. So for graduating the Wintertide Fellowship, she gets another Jame Eagan bust like we saw for Cobel when she was younger, when she graduated the program. And on it says Year of Vision, which was interesting because it reminded me of the plaque on Sissy's wall in Salt's Neck that said the same thing, Year of Vision, just kind of a cool detail I noticed. And Milchick tells her she has to make a material sacrifice, another weird tradition that they have at Lumen. So she basically has to take this bust of Jame and destroy her water ring toy thing. And it's kind of like a moment of growing up, I guess. She's, smashing her childish folly. But as she does it, you can tell, Seth's saying, "Oh, again," and he finds pleasure in watching her destroy this thing that he knows she cares about. And it reminds me of something we'll talk about in a minute, of his conversation with Drummond, where Drummond's, saying again, making him repeat that he's sorry. And there's this kind of, these rungs of the ladder where at every point in Lumen's hierarchy, people are kind of beaten down on the people below them. It's kind of an interesting thing. So as we head to Dylan's house, before, he gets the news that he's basically being cheated on by himself, we hear that Gretchen says that the kids were picked up by Asher or something along those lines. And the fact that they used a name and not, your brother or picked up the kids or your uncle or whoever it is, makes me think that maybe the name's important. Maybe we'll see more of whoever this is the next episode or next season or something like that. But then we move to the awkward conversation, and understandably, Dylan's pretty distraught to hear this news, and he doesn't exactly handle it very maturely. But at the same time, it's a weird situation because, it's kind of something that can only happen on this show where you're getting cheated on by yourself. But, so it's understandable. It's still, cheating. So I understand why he might react so poorly. It makes sense. Then as Helly goes looking for Mark and shows up in Milchick's office, we get this kind of really funny dynamic between them where she's asking questions and she's kind of really pushing the envelope. And Milchick's been getting a lot of grief from his subordinates this year, and he calls her out for being insubordinate, understandably. And she just says, yeah, no shit. And there's another really funny line delivery. Then we go to Innie, Dylan, and Gretchen, and we get this. It's a really endearing scene. It's really cute when he tries to propose to Gretchen. I don't know how the logistics of that would work at all, and I don't think he does either. But yeah, it was really endearing to see him try, at least. And like, he's never felt love before, and he just falls in love with Gretchen. And yeah, she turns him down, obviously, and tells him they can't meet anymore. But so that really crushes Dylan, and that kind of leads to the rest of the episode where Dylan's really defeated, and he even throws in his resignation request. And so we'll have to see what happens next with Dylan. It's interesting too, because it lines up with outie Dylan basically threatening to quit his job. So if Innie Dylan is trying to resign and outie Dylan is basically threatening to do the same thing, I doubt Dylan's going anywhere. You never know with Severance. But with those two things lining up at the same time, it could be interesting. It really seems to allow for it to actually happen, but I don't know if it really will. Then we get this really cool transition between Helly's kind of profile and the coastline as we see Mark and Devin driving to go meet Cobel. And it's just this perfect cross dissolve between the outline of her face and the outline of the coast. So I'm guessing that coastline is probably CG. They're just driving on a road that doesn't have a cliff on the side of it. It leads down to a lake. And yeah, it was just a beautiful cross dissolve. I love that kind of geometric alignment that it has in that shot. It's very cool. Then we get this meeting between Mark and Cobel and Devin, and you can tell Mark really thinks it's a bad idea, but they're really just out of options. So there's not a lot of choice here. They kind of have to work with Cobel. Then when Cobel asks, "Oh, how are you, Mark?" and we get that beautiful line delivery where he just says, "Oh, so good." And he says something about how, "Oh, my wife's being held prisoner at Lumen and I just got brain surgery in my basement." And the way Mark delivers that line is just so funny. He's so good in those comedic moments. And it's just so deadpan, and it's beautiful. I loved it. Then we get this line from Cobel about how, "Oh, Mark, we don't know if you've finished Cold Harbor yet. If you have, then Gemma's already dead." Us as the audience already know that he hasn't finished it because he's been missing work for the last 4% of the file. But yeah, that's pretty interesting. We didn't know that Gemma was necessarily going to be killed off when this file was finished. It makes me think, I wonder if Gemma ends up dying at the end of the season when they try to free her. But that would have to mean that Mark finishes the file for that to work. So maybe not. It'll be interesting to see. Then we get to this meeting between Drummond and Milchick, and this was definitely one of the highlights of the episode. Drummond blames Milchick for Mark not finishing his file yet, that he had promised it would be done today. And then Milchick uses the word remonstration, which leads to some blowback from Drummond. So Drummond makes him apologize. He really shames him. He really lays it on. And this kind of finally breaks Milchick, and he decides that he's not going to take it anymore. He gives this whole monologue about how, I deserve respect, even though I'm your underling, your subordinate, I'm the manager of the severed floor. I deserve respect. And then we get another one of these great phrases from Milchick where he says, "devour feculence." And that's perfect because he gets to use those big words. He really kind of comes into his own and really basically says F you to Drummond. And it just means eat shit, which was, that was nice. I liked that. And Milchick finally says, "It's not my responsibility, not my fault what Mark does outside of work. That's under your purview." And that was kind of a great last stinger that he got in there, and he just walks away. Drummond doesn't even know what to say because he's right, ultimately. Then Cobel convinces Mark to call Milchick back so that they don't revoke his access to the severed floor so that he can free Gemma and all that. And Mark makes up this lie about because of his nosebleeds, he went to a clinic in Soil Hill. That one made me laugh too because just, the way these cities are named, these towns are named in Severance are freaking hilarious. Like Soil Hill, it's so, yeah. Mark's trying to lie and he eventually just gives up on it and just says, "I needed to take the day." and he talks about how work isn't everything. Work's not all important. And it couldn't have come at a better time talking to Milchick about this, because he's just kind of had this breakthrough, right? And, he turns around, he's silent for a really long time, and he looks at the iceberg, and it made me think about how, if what's showing on top of the iceberg is Milchick's work life, all we've really seen so far, he's kind of just coming into this realization that there's more underneath. There's more to him. There's more than Lumen. There's more than the cult. There's more than his life. Then we get to Burt and Irving. You don't really know what's going to happen. It seems like Burt's probably going to kill Irving, but luckily it doesn't come to that. He asks him to go for a drive. They go to the train station. Burt buys him a ticket and basically says, "Get out of here." And as they have this kind of beautiful moment, it was interesting how Irving's talking about, "Oh, I'm ready," and made me think of that line in season 1 when he says, "I'm not ready." And for a moment I thought, oh my God, like, is he reintegrated? Like, how does he know that he said that? But I don't think that's really what they're alluding to. I think it's just more of a thematic callback, just for us, as the audience. And it was really a beautiful moment, like having him be ready. But unfortunately, this time, Burt turns him down. And I also thought it was interesting how, time is kind of irrelevant. The time period's kind of irrelevant in this show. And how, walking around the train station, we have these guys in fedoras and suits, kind of look like, they work at the CIA in the 1950s. I don't know. I like that. That was a cool detail. Kind of really keeps the ambiguity of when any of this is happening, or what time period it is really in here. Then we have Helly trying to memorize the directions to get to the testing floor. And her dad basically walks up behind her. And he says something about how, "Oh, you lied to me, Helly." Then we come back to Helly where she's trying to memorize the directions to get to the testing floor. And her dad walks up behind her and silhouetted standing there in the hallway. And he just says, "You tricked me." And it was an interesting line. We don't really know what he's talking about. It could be calling back to when she met him as Helly for the first time. And he spoke to her about, "Oh, don't you remember when I showed you the first Severance chip?" And be like, "Oh, the whole world should be severed, Daddy," or something like that. But it's also interesting how he calls her my Helly. Yeah, that's really weird. I guess we'll have to see what that's about. Then we get to the big end of the episode where Innie Mark is going to meet with Cobel for the first time since she quit, I suppose. They have Mark hiding in the back of the truck. Miss Cobel's driving, and then they have Devin in the passenger seat, pretending to be pregnant. And when they talk to the security guard at the gate, Cobel says, "Oh, it's one of Jame's." So I don't know if they're kind of alluding to this idea that Jame has a bunch of illegitimate children, a bunch of ladies he's banging, that they keep it secret. It's really interesting. I that might be a throwaway line that we don't come back to, but yeah, it just kind of builds the lore around Jame even more. Like, this guy's so weird. He's so sketch, Then Cobel and the security guard exchange some kind of coded language, maybe a secret passphrase or something like that. And then security lady just lets them through. Then we get this final meeting between them, and they really build it up. It's, they end on another big cliffhanger, of course. They're so good at that in these shows. But it just kind of leaves you wanting more. Like, I can't wait until next week. Devin asks Mark, to see if it's really him, "What was the last thing I said to you?" And he just says, "She's alive." And then we finally come to that cliffhanger. And yeah, I'm really excited about where the final episode's going to go. It'll be interesting to see how all these different elements come together. There was we talked about the promo shot last week of Cobel standing there in the cottage, and I was right that Cobel was, meeting Mark there. And so it makes me think, I wonder if next week, the only shot I've seen in the promo stuff that hasn't been in the show yet is Mark arriving on the testing floor. So that only really leaves one episode left for that shot to show up. So I guess we're probably going to be going to the testing floor finally. And it makes sense. The whole season's kind of been building the lore around their relationship, Mark and Gemma. and what Jem has been doing on the testing floor. So it makes sense that this would all kind of be leading up to some sort of final prison break, kind of similar to the structure of the first season, how it ended on that kind of breakout where they're trying to, spread the word and let everyone know what it's like, existing on the severed floor. But yeah, fuck, that's where they ended it. It sucks, but I'm excited. It builds so much anticipation for next week. And yeah, it was a good episode. It's been a great season overall. I'm really excited to kind of cover that last episode and talk more about it. This is really fun to kind of, get all this stuff out and share it with people. I know your time's valuable, so I just want to thank you for spending it with me. And I'm excited. I'll see you guys next week. Thanks for watching.